Christian parenting. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. You're listening to the All Mom Does podcast, part of the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Today on the All Mom Does podcast, I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. Crystal Paine is with me. You may know her as the money-saving mom, or this may be your first introduction. Crystal, thanks so much for being here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Now, when I started blogging a long, long time ago, you were there. I mean, you were doing all the things. You had just really tackled the online space and were making huge wins with it. And we're giving so much important content and help to women. So talk to me about those early days when you got started, because you were young, you were newly married. How did you stumble into the blog space?
Yeah, so I always joke that I'm a grandma blogger because I have been around before social media. So I started blogging in 2004. My husband was in law school. We were newly married and we wanted to stay out of debt, and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I was researching everything that I could do to make money online and fell into this blogging thing. Back then, people were like, "What's a blog?" And so you had to explain what a blog was before you told them what you blogged about. But I really, really loved it. I tried a lot of other things online, but blogging was the thing that I'm like, this is just the intersection of my passion, and it also allows me to have a profession. And so I noticed in that blog, I was just blogging on a lot of things related to just moms and what I was learning and experiencing in life, and people were so interested in the topic of money. And my husband and I were trying to stay out of debt, and he was going to law school, and we were just living on this beans and rice budget, and people just kept asking, "How are you doing this?" And so I started blogging on that, realized that there was a need for more on this topic. So started Money Saving Mom in 2007, really thinking it was just going to be this little side thing that I did. And it quickly turned into much more than a side thing. And my husband was able to come home, quit his law firm, come home in 2014. And we have been running Money Saving Mom full time together since then.
That is just amazing. I mean, you were definitely the site that I was going to all the time, trying to figure out, well, how did she, do her template? And what is she? And what is so powerful to me is that you landed in your niche in kind of an unexpected way. I think for a lot of us, we think that the story and the thing that we have to share is out of something powerful that we're doing, instead of something that for some of us feels like an improv tap dance where we're just trying to figure out how to make it all work. At what point did it begin to feel like, okay, people are actually looking to me for expertise? And how did you bridge that place of feeling like you could speak into that in confidence?
Yeah, so it is a weird thing. It's been such a journey for me. And when I first started blogging, I was very insecure. And I felt like I constantly had to apologize. And I was so worried what people thought. And when you put things out on the internet, people are going to have a lot of thoughts.
Yes, they are.
So it was a challenge. It was such a growing experience for me, though, to put things out there and to learn to just, sometimes it's just not worth having an argument with people, and what things you shouldn't put on the internet, and when you do need to apologize. And so it's been, like I said, a process. But for me, it was really, in the beginning, I was just trying to figure out is there a way to make money blogging? Because that was something that I was really hoping to not just be doing this for free if I'm going to invest all this time while I'm being a mom. And so it was probably, I think it took, I always say, like, if you blog every day for 2 years and you stick with it, usually you're going to see some fruit from that. And so that was for me, really getting up every single day and thinking, what can I do to help this make some traction here? And I don't have any money to spend on advertising. And so I'm going to have to figure out free ways to do this. And so I wrote a lot of articles for different sites, and I would put a link to my site in the bio. And just little bit by little bit, there were little trickles of traffic. And then those little trickles turned into a stream that then turned into like a river that then soon was a raging torrent that we couldn't find any hosting that would keep our site up. It was crazy. Yeah. But really, I think that it's that being faithful and sticking with it. I tell a lot of people that the number one reason people fail at blogging is just because they don't stick with it long enough, because it's hard. Right. And it doesn't usually happen overnight that you're going to be successful unless you're already a celebrity.
Right. Well, as a blog grandma, since you have seen the generations now, Where do you think we are in the iteration of blogging? Because I know my situation definitely changed. I was just doing more. It was more of a place for me to interact with other women. I had just had my twins, baby 7 and 8. We had moved to a new city 5 weeks before they were born. So when I started blogging in '07, same time period, it was really about just trying to find connection. I wasn't really thinking from a business standpoint, and have felt in a sense that I've been kind of catching up ever since, like, oh, there's actually potential here. I didn't realize that. So what do you see now that we are many more years into people being now, of course, not just familiar with blogs, but feeling like you got to have something on the web. And now we have all this intersection of social media that's overlaid that in the last 7-8 years. Where do you think it's all going now? Where do you think that online platform industry is headed?
That's interesting. I'm constantly trying to be a forward thinker, because I think that if you're going to be successful online, you have to evolve. You cannot stay stuck in a rut because it's constantly changing. But I do see a big shift, and I've seen this in the last few years, that people are following bloggers, not blogs. And now we've switched to they're following influencers. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people don't even have a blog. There's a lot of people who follow me on social media who have no clue that I have a blog.
Right, right.
It just is so interesting to me. And so I think we've seen that shift. And I think for people to be successful, you really have to be willing to put yourself out there a little bit more. You usually can't just sit behind a screen and type up some words. I hate to say this because a lot of people don't like live video, but I think being willing to be on live video, put yourself out on Instagram stories, that's really how people are connecting. And we see that shift of, with the reels and with TikTok and things like that, that people are connecting with videos. And I think the face-to-face connection through video is one of the most powerful things right now.
Right. For me, when I first started blogging, I was Octomom, and this is before the gal had the octuplets and all that, and they tried to buy the name. But I was so careful about putting my kids' names out there. They were 1 of 8, 2 of 8, 3 of 8. I know for you, Crystal, for a long time, it was money saving mom. Like, that's how I knew you. And now, of course, we're in a completely different era where it is everything's out there. And you've had a really unique situation, because in grappling with some family challenges that you've had, you're also trying to show up and be real with your audience. How do you navigate that? And we're going to get into more of the specifics of a season that you've just been through and some really great wisdom and insight and help that you have to offer. But how did you grapple with that transition where we went from being a lot more, not secretive, but just cautious, I guess, to people having that expectation that in order to trust you, in order to be interested in your message, they really wanted to be able to kind of vet you and be able to see you and interact with you. How did you navigate that transition?
It's been an interesting transition because, for one, like I said, I was super insecure when I started blogging. And so if you had asked me to go on video, I'd been like, I'm out. Bye.
Bye.
I had no interest in standing on a stage, doing any sort of live media, or doing anything that involved me not sitting behind my computer in a safe space without a video on. And so it's just been interesting because now I love live video. That is my jam. Instagram stories. I'm the Money Saving Mom on Instagram, and I love Instagram stories. It is just my favorite place. But when it comes to my kids, it has been this kind of navigating and figuring that out, because as they've gotten older, you realize the ramifications of things a lot more. And so ever since they were little, I've always thought of, everybody in the world could be reading what I'm sharing, and anyone in the world could be seeing these photos. And so I've always been very careful of the kind of photos that I put of my kids, just because there are creeps out on the internet. So I'm always like, kids have to be fully clothed if they're going to be on the internet. That's just one of my rules. But then as they've gotten older, that they have, they care about what you're sharing. And so I've always been thinking of, what in 10 years from now, if someone is wanting to hire them and they're Googling their name, because that's what people do.
Yes, they do.
What are they going to find? And is there going to be any information on the internet that I would not want someone who is potentially going to hire my child to see, or someone who just maybe, is looking for something on my child? I don't want that to be there. And so just always trying to be careful and cautious. And the interesting thing is, now that they are older, their friends follow me online too, and their
Yeah.
teachers follow me online
Right,
too, which
right.
is just a whole other thing, because just 2 days ago at lunch, I had done an Instagram story, and they had it pulled up, and there was a whole gaggle of kids, and they were asking, which child did this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just a good reminder that you just always want to be respectful of them. And so now, by the time they're about 8 or 9, I really have them, they're very involved in, are you okay with me putting this picture? Are you okay with me sharing this? And a lot of times what I share, I will share it in a way that you won't know which child it is.
Right.
It's helpful that I have 3 older kids, and that there's 2 girls and a boy, so you can kind of be a little bit more, if I only had one child, that would,
I mean, it might be easier to figure it out. Yeah.
and so that makes it good. But for instance, with writing this book and sharing more vulnerably, the kids actually helped me. First, we prayed together and talked together a lot before I said yes. And then we really talked about what would it look like and how much would you feel comfortable with me sharing. And then they helped me write the chapters and the sections that were on them. They helped with revisions and all of that to make sure that they felt comfortable with it being put out there.
Right, right. You're so wise, Crystal, because it's absolutely accurate that to some degree, we as the parents are, and this is going to sound like a super jaded and industry term, but I'm going to go there anyway. We are developing our kids' brand as they appear on our social media platforms. And employers absolutely do the deep dive into looking into how we present that story and any place that they are looking for that. It's exactly the same thing that we tell our kids all the time about their own social media platforms. Hey, be aware that what you're posting, what you're doing could show up at some point in a job search, in some kind of background work. But that also is true for us moms, that what we are putting out there also becomes part of the archive of our kids' lives. So I love that wisdom from you, Crystal, to really think forward in that way. You are on one of the most epic journeys of your life, the parenting journey. It's my hope that the All Mom Does podcast brings information, inspiration, community, and hope to that journey for you. As you know, the All Mom Does podcast now partners with the Christian Parenting Network, which helps get the podcast out to even more people. Christian Parenting is an online ministry that's helping over 500,000 parents a month find freedom in being the perfectly imperfect parents they were meant to be. And it would mean so much if you were able to donate to keep Christian Parenting and the All Mom Does podcast going strong. You can make your donation today by texting CPGIVE to 474747. That's CPGIVE to 474747. You can also give by visiting cpgive.org, and you'll be entered to win the Perfectly Imperfect Parenting Bundle with all kinds of great parenting resources. That's cpgive.org, and thanks so much for your generosity. Now, in talking about a recent challenge that your family's come across, engaging the kids and how to tell that story, you have an interesting tale to tell, because some of us really resonate with the idea of, we find out that one of our kids has been bullied, has been the kid who has been on the opposite end of being teased, of having different things going on. You made a really startling revelation kind of in the opposite direction. What did you discover was going on in your kid's life and you didn't have any idea?
Yes, so it was a little over 4 years ago. My husband went to take the kids to school for school drop-off, and the principal said, I need to meet with you and your wife and this child after school.
Oh, that never sounds good.
Never a good thing. And he came home and he told me, and he said, what could this be about? And we could not come up with, we racked our brain to try to think what it could be about, and we couldn't come up with anything. And so we went into that meeting, you just have that gut feeling that something is really bad and it's about to go down. And so we found out that our child had broken the school's code of conduct, done something very serious the day before, and they were being asked to make some pretty significant things needed to happen to change, and eventually then they were asked to leave the school. But in the process of that, we were just blindsided by what had happened the day before. Then we started meeting with parents and the principal and trying to uncover what had gone down, and figured out that for months our child had been seen as the bully in school, and we did not know that this was going down. Multiple parents had gone to the principal, multiple parents had talked amongst themselves, and we were clueless. Mm-hmm. And so as a parent, you feel this huge weight of responsibility that, how did I miss that? I mean, there were these little things that you're just like, oh, that's part of growing up. Kids have little spats among, what I mean?
Right,
There's a
right.
bit of drama and all that. And we thought we had worked through it, and come to find out, oh no, it was much worse than that. And it was really, there was so much more there. And it was, our child was acting out of a lot of stuff that was under the surface that we had just completely missed.
Right. I think for any of us who are really trying to stay on alert and make sure that we're observing everything that's going on, that sense of being blindsided, such a tough one. And it cast you in a role very quickly, to my mind, that had to be complex. Because, of course, if any of us found out that our kid was being the bully and there was good evidence, kind of irrefutable evidence that this is what was going on, and yet at the same time, we are supposed to be our kid's advocate and we are supposed to help protect. How did you navigate all of that? Like being willing to be open to being told, hey, this is a real deal. This is a situation. And yet at the same time, also stay in a posture of wanting to help your child, not just discipline or correct what had happened.
That was really hard because we were like, I don't know what we do. We didn't want our child to just feel like, well, mom and dad aren't going to stand up for me. They don't care. They're not going to fight for me. I'm not a priority. But at the same time, we also didn't want to be the parent that was like, our kid would never do that. Just what is your problem? Because there was evidence. And so it was a real challenge. And then also because of that, then our child was very, very hurt and upset, which then kind of triggered this whole ripple effect of things that then they just went into this deep, dark depression, and then their anxiety spiraled out of control. They were just mouthing off and angry and just vitriol just spewing out of their mouth, and we had to pull them out of everything in their life and bring them home and just say, but then we're like, well, what do we do? Because
now we've got you home and you're still this very angry, upset kid. Yeah.
And then it spiraled into the suicidal stuff, and it was scary. Like, it's very scary as a parent when you just feel desperate that your child needs help, but you don't know what to do. And we had looked into lots of different therapists and counselors, and we had found a few that we felt had been highly recommended. We called them, and each of them, they either said they were full, they didn't have any openings, or they said, I'm sorry, we don't take a case like yours. You're going to have to, this is a more severe whatever, when we told them what had gone down. And that's really scary because you're like, you're supposed to be the experts in here. You can't help us. Mm-hmm. And so finally, when we kept calling, and one of them said, you guys need to take your child to the ER. That's what you need to do right now because they're showing suicidal tendencies and this is very serious. So we did. And I feel like that was one of the lowest days of my life, to just have to walk in there. And I start the book out with talking about, just walking in there and saying, my child's suicidal. Mm-hmm. And the kind of one of the worst things as a mom that you ever want to have to say, and just to be there and be in that place and feel so helpless, and that your child needs help and you don't know what to do. And so just crying out to God. And I remember, it's interesting because I was sitting there in the room. They had brought my child into the room, taken all their clothes, they give them a gown, and they bring somebody in to watch them, and they're monitoring all this stuff. And I'm sitting there, and I was actually supposed to be the keynote speaker at a homeschool conference the next week, talking about raising kingdom-minded kids. And I'm sitting there going, I've got nothing to share. I have I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like it was such a good place to be, though, because I had to rely upon the Lord. I couldn't rely upon, things are going pretty well. And, nothing's, you just have, when you get to that place of desperation, you're crying out, and God is all you have. And he met me there in such a really sweet, beautiful way of, I'm with you, and I will be with you, and I will carry you in this. And I know your heart is breaking right now, but I'm here with you. And it was through that, then we were able to find a therapist who was willing to take our child. And I remember we had our initial meeting with the therapist and sitting on that couch across from them and saying to her, I will do whatever it takes to help my child. Please just help us. I'm desperate. We need help. And if there's anything that you can come up with that I could change, please let me know. And a few weeks later, she called me in after she dismissed my child She said, you said if there's anything, and I think that I've come up with something. She said, I feel like it seems like you're working so hard to try to fix your child. What would it look like to just walk with them and love them? And that led me on a journey that I really recount in Love-Centered Parenting, of just how I was trying so hard in my own strength to micromanage and to control and to fix and to solve and to bubble wrap. It's like I just wanted to have good kids. And I did it from a place of love for my child. But a lot of how I was parenting was from a place of insecurity, because I was so worried about what other people thought. And so I was so wanting to make sure that I curate my reputation. And so I was parenting from that place of caring more about my reputation in front of others than my relationship with my child. And so many of the ways that I would approach how I would respond to my child was out of, I cared what people thought. And it was like God just stripped away all of that, because people already thought it was, they already didn't think highly at all of me as a parent. So it's like, might as well just start over from ground zero. And it was just so good to start analyzing, why am I responding to my child like this? Where is this coming from? And to really unearth in me that I didn't believe that I was loved fully and wholeheartedly by God. And so I had to learn to be reparented by my Heavenly Father first before I could parent out of love to my kids. So this journey of replacing those lies that I believed for so long, that you're not enough, that you need to do more, that you're a disappointment to those closest to you, that if people really knew you, they wouldn't like you. Replacing those lies with the truth of who I am in Christ, and really standing confidently in that truth and letting that truth permeate me to the depths of my soul, and then living as loved. And when you're in that place of confidence of living as loved, it doesn't matter what other people think.
Right.
Like we talked about with the blogging thing, where people have very strong opinions when you put yourself out on the internet. And I wanted to defend myself, but I realized when you stand in confidence in who you are in Christ, and you know how much you're loved by Him, your shield goes down, because you don't need to defend yourself, because you know that you are loved, and you can stand in that love, and you can parent out of that love. And in my book, Love-Centered Parenting, I talk about you can't give what you don't have. And so if you want to wholeheartedly love and walk with your kids, it starts with you. Moms, it has to start with you. It's not a chore chart. It's not a book. It's not the perfect schedule. It's not the perfect academics or school or extracurricular activities. It starts with you. It starts in your heart, and you modeling before your kids that confidence in Christ and how much you are loved by Him, and you living that out to your kids. That is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to them.
Absolutely. And we do put, I think, so much pressure on those who are in the public space to see how their kids are doing, because we're all looking for a system, Crystal. We want somebody to say, if you do A plus B plus C, you're going to end up with faithful kids, and that's where you're going to land. I love that advice you were given about just walking alongside your child instead of trying to fix them. And it's hard. And it's hard for those of us who are performers. And it's hard for those of us who might have been raised in backgrounds where our outward behavior was absolutely what was taken as the consideration of how the depth of our relationship with God might go. So to walk alongside a child who's experiencing a hard time, and to keep your chin up in your pride that they're your kid, even when they're not behaving in ways that you're loving, but you still love them because they're your kid, what a restorative thing to be able to offer them, particularly when you're in the public space. As you started dissecting down to the core of what you began to see, okay, the bullying is really a symptom. How did you sift through all that to get to the core of where this kid was really struggling? Because particularly when those outward expressions feel more egregious to us, and of course, who wants to be the mom of the bully? We feel a little bit more prepared to be the mom of the kid who's being bullied than we do to be the mom of the kid who's bullying. As you begin to strip all that away, what did you begin to find was there that was something that now you know to look for, that might help other moms to look for, instead of being kind of blinded by the bigger behaviors, if you will, that sometimes show up?
I think it's so important to recognize that a lot of times we're just seeing the surface, and we are trying to fix the surface we're trying to slap that bandage on a broken bone. And so to really dive down deep. And so for this child, they needed to learn how to express their feelings. And because they had just pushed everything down, stuffed everything down, bottled everything up, and they had all these really big feelings, everything was coming out sideways as anger. And so through the therapist, every single week, the therapist would sit my child down and they would have to practice feelings. And they would do it different ways. Sometimes it would be with a game or some kind of toy or, just anything to get their hands and their mind working together. And they associated colors with feelings. And every week my child had to express, I felt angry this week when this happened. I felt disappointed. I felt, and so learning to do that. And at first I was like, they're never going to get that. They don't even, they can't even put words together that aren't just anger and beating the wall kind of thing. There's no way this is going to happen. But we kept showing up. We kept showing up. We kept showing up. And over a year's time, this child actually learned how to say, I felt embarrassed when that happened, or I felt sad when that happened. And it was very convicting to me because I realized I haven't been modeling this for my kids. I am someone who stuffs things down as well. I don't say to my kids, when that happened, it made me feel like this. I would just maybe get angry or be irritable or even, my feelings were coming out sideways too. And so to learn about feelings and to learn how to have emotional language to be able to express what you're feeling. And so that has really changed our home in such a big way. But then there was also, I'm so grateful for the therapist really uncovering that there were some mental health things at play. There was anxiety and depression. And so for us to be able to get some tools to be able to walk through that as well. So now it doesn't usually ever escalate to this, major severe level because we are learning the little warning signs along the way that we can start addressing when, you see the little trigger and then you can then stop and say, hey, so it seems like you're, feeling, let's talk about what you're feeling right now. And, where's that coming from? And so we're addressing it. And then also me realizing that a lot of times when our kids are communicating things, even if it's in a really sideways way, they're crying out for our attention.
Right.
And that was one big thing that I realized I was spending so much of my time correcting bad behavior and spending almost no time connecting with my child because all of my connecting was correcting. And so to realize what would it look like for me to just step into their world and care about what they care about. And that we just have time together where we're just hanging out and we're just being together and I am interested in what they are interested in. What would that look like? And to spend a whole lot less time preaching sermons and a whole lot more time just sitting with them and loving them.
I love that phrase, that recognition. You were spending more time correcting than connecting. Such a powerful thing to remember and to store in our hearts when we evaluate and do a time audit on the kind of time we are spending with our child. Crystal, what was the impact on your marriage trying to walk through this situation? Because I would have to guess there was all kinds of mom guilt going on. And again, that very strange tension of needing to be this child's advocate, but at the same time having to own up to the severity and the impact on other kids and families. And how did that work within the context of your marriage?
I'm so grateful because since my husband and I had been married for a number of years at this point, we'd already walked through a lot of really rough patches in our marriage. And so I feel like that gave us a firm foundation when it felt like everything was crumbling to be able to go back to and lean on one another. I feel like one of us would have a really hard day and the other one would have a little bit of energy to be able to encourage. And so it was just that back and forth and really leaning on one another and praying together and just really crying out to the Lord together and trying very hard that there was no pointing fingers at one another and saying, well, if you had blah, 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 or this might have stemmed from, but just to walk through it together. And I think that it was really powerful for our marriage and also really powerful for me to see my husband's heart in this. And, for us to know we're not going to do this all perfectly. We're going to make mistakes. That's part of parenting. That's why we have Jesus. But we're going to just love each other and lean into one another through this and do this together as a team.
Right. Because, you do hear times where mom feels strongly one way and dad feels another. And what should be done, you are fighting this battlefront for your child, but then behind the scenes between the two generals, there's all kinds of skirmishing going on. And so how did you guys make sure that you stayed connected in the midst of this, and that this child's crisis didn't become the everything? Because that's a real temptation too. Even if you can be on page together, then sometimes when our kids are going through a really hard time, that becomes the everything of the family.
Yeah, I remember distinctively one time, it was a few weeks after kind of everything had gone down in the principal's office, and we were just at odds with one another, and we had actually had a big argument, and the argument was not, it wasn't about whatever.
It wasn't about what it was about.
It wasn't about that. It was that we were both feeling so stressed and upset and so just scared. And I just remember that we both realized we don't want to be like this. And when we need each other. And I don't remember which one of us I think it was my husband came back to me and he just asked forgiveness. And he said, I'm really sorry. And, for both of us to own up to the way that we had treated one another and say, this is not okay. We have to be on the same page. And so asking forgiveness, I think, is such an important piece of marriage and parenting. I talk about this in my book, Love Centered Parenting, how, leading with humility. And that is in front of our kids, seeing us ask each other forgiveness when we have, messed up, and especially when we messed up in front of the kids, and then asking the kids forgiveness as well. I think it's such an important piece of, having those healthy relationships.
Right. In the book, you give a strategy for nixing negative narratives, and you've alluded to this when your child would kind of get into a spiral of only expressing anger, but equip us with that. What are 3 things we can do when we have a kid who's going through a hard time and things are trending negative, or we're grappling with a situation with our child and we are having some negative narrative with our spouse? Like, what can we do?
So I think the first thing, anytime you're feeling like your child is lashing out, or you're very concerned about what's going on, or you're feeling like something's not right, instead of just immediately like, I'm a fixer and I just want to go in and I want to try to fix the situation,
right,
but to stop, take a step back, and cry out to the Lord. In the book, I talk about flare prayers. And a lot of times, we don't have time to sit and have a 15-minute long prayer session, but we can send a flare prayer up to say, God, I don't know what to do in this situation. Please help me. And there's something about us just not charging into a situation, but stepping back and acknowledging our need before the Lord and crying out to Him for wisdom and saying, how do I lean in and love my child? And so asking Him for that and then secondly, I think it's really important that we pay attention to our responses, how we're wanting to respond to our child. If we're wanting to lash out or get upset or feel frustrated, or we're feeling triggered, for us to stop and say, where is this coming from? Mm-hmm. And for me, it was so many lies that I had believed about myself. And so, am I caring more about my reputation in front of others? Am I, worried about something that I don't have any control over? Where is this coming from? And then really paying attention to the words that we say about ourselves, either internally or externally. How often are we saying, oh my goodness, I'm always failing, or, saying, I need to lose some weight, or these pants are snug on me again, like the negative narrative. Or we're talking about, allowing ourselves to tell ourselves you failed, or that you're a disappointment, or you're not enough, or everyone else is doing it so much better than you. What's your problem? Get it together. And really paying attention to that, and starting to not only pay attention to it, but call those things a lie and then replace those lies with truth. For me, that has just completely changed my life.
That replacement's really critical. And Christ speaks of this, that, you can drive out, a demon and something. And then if you don't replace it with something, it comes back in 7 times worse. And I think that's part of where we struggle at times with our habits, with our personal narratives to ourselves. We are so busy trying to sweep out the house, we don't think about what we're going to replace with it. So I love that idea for replacing those lies with truth. So flare prayer, love that phrase. That is so great. And then paying attention to our responses, and then paying attention to what we're saying, and being intentional to replace that verbiage with that which is truth. Awesome. Well, Crystal, I can't thank you enough for being on today. I know that your wisdom and your willingness to share what has been a tough experience, and yet I know that it's going to pay dividends forward for families and for moms who are wrestling in similar areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You'll find more from this episode on the show notes. Be sure and check them out at allmomdoes.com. And wanted to ask you a big favor. Be sure and go to wherever you are listening to this podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us get the word out about the podcast. Can't wait to see you next time on the All Mom Does podcast.